Good day, everyone. This is Janeline Idorig reporting for Chapter 8, which is the communication. So, communication applies to all phases of management. Communication is defined as the transfer of information from a sender to a receiver with the information being understood by the receiver. So, communication is whether within a family, an educational institution, a church, a business enterprise. So Chester I. Barnard defines communication as an essential means by which people are linked together to an organization to achieve a common purpose. So truly, group activity is impossible without communication and the change cannot be effected. Psychologists have developed a keen interest to communication and have focused on the identification of barriers to good communication, especially those that involve the interpersonal relationships of people. Political scientists, sociologists, and programmer analysts have concentrated on the study of communication network. So the purpose of communication. The primary purpose of communication in an organization is to effect change, to initiate and influence action for the welfare of the organization. Communication is very important for the internal and external functioning of the organization because it integrates the managerial function. Communication is needed to organize human and other resources in the most efficient and effective way. Also, it is to establish and disseminate the goals of the organization, to develop plans for their achievement, to select, develop, and appraise members of the organization, to lead, direct, motivate, and create a climate in which people want to contribute and to control performance. So that is the purpose of communication. Next, the communication process. So the communication has its elements. So these are the sender, the message, the medium or the channel, the receiver, the feedback, the noise, and the context. Next, the communication process. Communication begins with the sender of the message who has an idea which is encoded in a way that can be understood by both the sender and the receiver. Simple and clear language should be used so that the message will be received and followed. The idea must be oral or written, and it may be transmitted through a memorandum, a telephone, a telegram, a computer, a television, or simply a conversation. The idea must be transmitted and the message must be received. The receiver must interpret the message, or the receiver must encode the message, and the message must be correctly understood. Finally, the receiver must provide feedback when necessary. It may be noted that also of importance in understanding the communication process is noise, a term standing in the environment in which the process that hinder communication takes place. Communication is affected by the noise, whether in the sender transmission or the receiver. For example, a noise or a confined environment may hinder the development of clear thought or idea. Encoding may be faulty because of the use of ambiguous symbols. Transmission may be interrupted by static in the channel, such as a poor telephone connection. Decoding may be faulty because the wrong meaning may be attached to words and other symbols. Understanding can be obstructed by prejudices. Next, to determine the effectiveness of communication, a person must have feedback. The feedback checks whether or not the message has been effectively encoded, transmitted, or understood until it is confirmed. There are situational and organizational factors that affect the communication, which are the educational, the sociological, the legal, political, the cultural, economic, and geographic distance. So, a repressive political environment with a climate of fear will certainly inhibit the free flow of communication. Another situational factor is a geographic distance. A direct face-to-face communication is different from a telephone conversation with a person on the other side of the globe. So, di ba mas mo prefer ta og face-to-face kaysa through smartphones lang kay sa face-to-face na communication nato is makita gyud nato ang kung unsa gyud ma-express gyud nato atong gusto ipakita sa ilaha, like when we use only telephones or other gadgets, we tend to misunderstand. Kung unsa ilang gusto ipahiwatig sa ato. So next time may also be considered in communication. A busy executive may not have sufficient time to receive and send information accurately. A communication model provides an overview of the communication process, identifies the critical variables, and shows the relationship. This helps the manager pinpoint communication problems and take the necessary steps to solve them. It is essential that production problems be communicated quickly for a corrective actions. The amount of information which has greatly increased over the years may cause information overload. What is needed is not more information but relevant information. It is necessary to determine what kind of information a manager should have for effective decision making. So again, the communication process should be used effectively. So when the sender is carrying out the process, he should take 3 important steps. So as a sender, we are obliged to carry out these 3 important steps, which is plan the communication. So planning is very important. Second, remember that meanings are in people, not in words. So dili lang ta maghuna-huna nga kung unsa ato ang gipasabot. Kung unsa atong ibuot ipasabot kay kuan kani maaari na lahi ang pagsabot ana sa uban sa imuhang kaistorya. So select the best method of transmission, the third one. Next, an effective communication begins with a plan. This plan should help the manager answer 3 questions. So 3 important questions in planning an effective communication. So first, why do you want to communicate? Unsay purpose nato sa atong pag-communicate ana? Unsay purpose atong message? Okay, sunod. To whom will be the message directed? So para asa ang ato ang message? Para asa ang information para asa ang ato i-relay nga information? Next, what do you want to happen as the result of this message? Unsa nga feedback imong gusto madawat as a result ato imong giistorya na information? So, flow of communication in the organization. So, this picture is about organizational hierarchy. Next, communication flows in various directions: upward, downward, and crosswise. Traditionally, downward communication was emphasized, but if communication flows, only downward problems might arise. Communication also flows horizontally, that is, between people on the same organizational levels, and diagonally, involving persons from different levels who are not in direct reporting relationship with one another. So first, flow of communication, downward. Downward communication is a flow from people at higher levels to those at levels in the organizational hierarchy. So this type of communication includes instructions, speeches, meetings, and the telephone and loudspeakers. So downward communication means the information is from their superior. So for example in this chart, so it is from the CEO down to the healthy or beauty food admin and finance. So gibali ang CEO ang sender sa message, ang receiver is kaning health nga na-assign sa health, sa beauty, sa food, and sa admin. So mao na downward communication. Next, upward communications flows from that subordinates to superiors, so from subordinates to superiors and continues up the organizational hierarchy. Examples of upward communications are suggestion systems, appeal and grievances procedure, complaint systems, counseling sessions, the grapevine, group meetings, moral questionnaires, exit interviews, and ombudsperson. So, ang upward communication pod is kabaliktaran siya sa downward. So, kung magpa-upward ka, so meaning, sugod ka sa ubos, padulong ka sa taas. So, example ani nga chart is from this customer service, murag iyang kaistorya is, iyang kaistorya is from marketing to finance to like that. So, next, crosswise communication. So, crosswise communication compromises the horizontal flow of information among personnel on the same organizational levels and the diagonal flow among personnel at different levels who have no direct reporting relationships with one another. This kind of communication speeds information flow, improves understanding, and coordinates efforts to achieve organizational objectives. So, the organization environment provide many occasions for oral communication. These range from informal meetings of the company, written forms of communications keep people informed about the organization. This written form include the organization newsletter or magazine or bulletin board announcements. Many modern organizations use a variety of oral and written crosswise communication patterns to supplement the vertical flows of information. So, crosswise communication should be understood that, first, crosswise relationships will never be encouraged whenever they are inappropriate. Subordinates will refrain from making commitments beyond their authority. Subordinates will inform superiors about interdepartmental activities. So, during aning crosswise communication, ang kaning crosswise communication is pwede sila maka-communicate sa lain nga department but then with the same authority. Yes. Next, type of communication. So, first, written communication. So, written communication has the advantage of providing records, references, and legal briefs. A message can be carefully prepared and then directed to a large audience through mass mailings. So, written communication promotes uniformity in policy and procedure and reduces costs. So, written communication. Una siya ang kanang true letters. Maghatag ka true letters. But, nasa disadvantage. Ang disadvantage niya is may be poorly expressed by ineffective writers and may provide no immediate feedback. So, sa kadugay pa, sa kataas na nimo gihatag nga message sa iya sa kadugay niya nga nabasa to, na ay tendency nga, kung ikaw gadali ka nga sender, gulat kasi ang feedback, na ay tendency nga, dugay jud nimo siya ma-receive because of the reading. Kay magbasa pa man ka ang written communication. So, next, the oral communication. So, oral communication, most of the time, people communicate orally. So, oral communications occurs in a face-to-face meeting of two persons or in a manager's presentation to a big audience. It can be formal or informal, and it can be planned or accidental. The important advantage of oral communication is that it makes a speech interchange of ideas with immediate feedback. So, kung sa written communication, maghulat pa ka og mga dugay nga feedback gikan sa imong receiver, sa oral communication is urada-urada dayon siya. Kay face-to-face man mo ga communicate. But, na siya disadvantage. It does not always save time, as a manager knows who was to attend meeting in which no results or agreement were achieved. So, napod siya disadvantage kay kanang during sa inyong pag-istorya og dili satisfied ang imong manager sa imong gitubag. So, magkadugay jud inyong time kay di ba kailangan man jud to sa satisfied. Okay, next. Non-verbal communication. So, people communicate in various ways. What an individual says can be reinforced or contradicted by nonverbal communication, such as facial expression and bodily gestures. So, basically, nonverbal communication supports the verbal, but it does not always do so. For example, an autocratic manager may strike the conference table with his fist and emphatically announce that from now on, participative management will be practiced. So, this being the case, contradictory communications will certainly create a credibility gap. So, mao to siya ang 3 types of communication. So, we'll go on to common problems of communication. So, problems of communication can exist in the sender, in the transmission of the message, in the receiver, or in the feedback. The common problems of communications are as follows. First, lack of planning. Good communication does not happen by chance. So, if you want to have a good communication, so you must plan. Kay dili sa tanang panahon kung dili ka magplano mo work. Kung gusto ka good communication, kung gusto ka mo work in yung pag-communicate duha, you need to plan. Dili kay magsalig na lang ka permi sa chamba. Okay? So, semantic distortion. Semantic organization is another problem of effective communication. This can be deliberate or accidental. So, an example of an advertisement that states, "We sell for less," is deliberately ambiguous. It virtually raises the question, less than what? So, di ba natin makita sa mga commercials nga, mga sila, "We sell for less." So, kita kay kuan sa atua naghuna-una tang unsa ilang asa sila nag-compare asa ang less than what natay mabuo nga kuan ba hypothesis atong hunahuna like maka-question ta og unsa like makabilin bitaw sa atua og kanang pangutana mao nay semantic distortion. So next, poorly expressed message. So, even if the idea is in the mind of the sender of communication, the message may still be marked by poorly chosen words, lack of coherence, poor organization, awkward sentence structure, and unnecessary jargon. So, naay uban manggod nga, like me, I'm not good in public speaking. So, sometimes ma-misunderstood nila ako ang gipang istorya. But then, daghan kayong ideas sa ako ang mind, like that. Pero, lahi ang naa sa imuhang utok, lahi pod ang imuhang istorya. Maunay, poorly expressed message. What is in your mind will never get out of your mouth. Kay, ambot nga nung ingana. So next, communication problem in the international environment. So, communication in an international environment becomes more difficult because of different language, cultures, and etiquette. So, translating advertising slogans is very risky. For example, the slogan, "Put a tiger in your tank" by Exxon was very effective in the United States, but it is an insult to the people in Thailand. Colors have different meanings in various cultures. In many Western countries, black is often associated with death, while in the Far East, white is the color of mourning. So, dili gyud ta communication problem in the international environment. Dako jud kay ni siya kay sa language pa lang nato daan, kita mag-speak ta og English, and ang ato ang ka-istorya is Korean, which is we don't know how to speak Korean as well as the Koreans don't know how to speak English. So, how can we communicate properly if ako dili ko makasabot sa iya and dili po siya makasabot sa ako. And also about the culture and the etiquette. So, next, loss by transmission and poor retention. So, the message becomes less accurate in a series of transmission from one person to the next. The necessity of repeating the message and using several channels is very important. So, companies should often use more than one channel to communicate the same message. So, sometimes, kung unsa akong giistorya sa iyaha, may istorya na po siya sa uban, na natoy mga lack, na natoy something lack of information na bitaw, which is makahimo nga malahi na ang malahi na ang message atong ako ang istorya. So, next, poor listening. So, there are many who talk but few who listen. So, dili man ikalimod pero ingani magyud ta usahay nga usahay kung daghan kitag ideas, sige, istorya na lang po ta sa tong mga ideas. But then we tend to forget to listen. So listening is very important, no, in order for us to communicate properly. So kung puro lang ta istorya, wala tay madawat nga feedback gikan sa ato ang kaistorya kay kita. Puro naman ta istorya. Okay, sunod. Impersonal communication. So, effective communications is more than simple transmitting information to employees. So, impersonal communication. So, dili face-to-face nga communication. So, mo na to kung iyong ganiha nga, we tend to misunderstand kay wala ta kabalo og sa ato ang sa expression ba nato, kung sa facial expression or unsa nga expression nato kay kung sa tawag na ta wala ta kabalo og tinuod ba yang gikuan, tinuod ba og sincere ba siya sa iyang istorya, like that. So isa po na siya sa problems of communication. So sunod, distrust, threat, and fear. This destroys communications. In an organizational climate, having these forces, any messages will be perceived with skepticism. Distrust can be the result of inconsistent behavior by the superior, or it may be due to past unpleasant experiences in which the subordinate was punished for honestly reporting unfavorable but true information to the management. A climate of trust facilitates open and honest communication. So distrust. So how can you communicate? How can a good communication work within you two who are talking if you don't trust the one you are talking to? Unsaon ninyo pag naamoy effective communication kung ikaw nagduha-duha ka og salig sa imong kaistorya? Unsaon ninyo nga naamoy effective communication kung naa kay kahadlok sa imong kaistorya? Syempre mo drives yun ang mas mukuan jud, mas mangibabog yun ang atong distrust, ang threat ug ang atong fear. So that's why isa po na siya sa problems of communication. So next, inadequate time for adjustment to change. So the primary purpose of communication is to effect change. This may concern employees shift in time, place, type, or group arrangement, or the appropriate skills to be used. Changes affect people in various ways, and it may take time to think through the full meaning of a message. So kani siya kay like nakakuha na ka nakaset na ang kaning mga employee og meeting ana diri nga place, but then ay sudden change. So kato siya naka-ready na to siya dadto nga place, but then inya ang kuanan ang tawag ni ang inyong shiftan nga place kay layo man. So unsa na nanay conflict sa time, and unsa na dili na siya maka-adjust, maglisod na siya og adjust sa iyahang pagdali-dali kay dali-dali naman nila about dadto. So sunod, information overload. So information overload is one of the common problems of effective communication. Unrestricted flow may result into much information. People respond to information overload in different ways. They may disregard certain information. So pag nagani na nakuha na kita sa information overload, daghan na kay information na sulod sa atoa, which is also a problem kay dapat specific ta sa atong information nga ihatag, but then kung na-overload na natag general. So we need to be specific, not general. Okay. So other related problems of combination are attitude, which is the predisposition to act or not in a certain way. Differences in status and power between the sender and the receiver of the information. It has been observed that when information has to pass through several levels in organizational hierarchy, it may tend to be as distorted. So values. So we need to respect each other. So dili ta maglantaw og superiority. Effective guidelines for improving communication. So, effective communication is the responsibility of all personnel in the organization who work toward a common objective. The following guidelines can improve communication. So, first, clarify the purpose of the message and the plan to achieve the intended end. Effective communication requires that encoding and decoding be done with symbols that are familiar to the sender and to the receiver of the message. The planning of the communication should encourage people to participate, to collect facts, analyze the message, and select the appropriate media. Consider the needs of the receiver of the information. Communicate something that is of value to them. In communication, the tone of the voice, the choice of language, and the congruency between what is said and how it is said influence the reaction or the receiver of the message. The communication should be complete so that the message will be understood by the receiver. One of the primary functions of communication is to transmit information. So an effective communication is the joint responsibility of the sender and the receiver of the information. So in order to have an effective communication, the sender and receiver must understand each other. Next, so 10 guides to improve listening according to Keith Davis and John W. Newstrom. So first, stop talking. Put the talker at ease. Show the talker that you want to listen. Remove distraction. Empathize with the talker. Be patient. Hold your temper. Go east on arguments and criticisms. Ask questions and again, stop talking. The first and the last guides are the most important. People have to stop talking before they can listen. So we need to stop talking. It is unethical kung mo istorya ta nya napay ga istorya sa atubangan. Mahimo ta nga wala tay respeto sa ga istorya. Next, so Carl R. Rogers and F.J. Roestelisberger suggest that whenever an argument ensues, try to apply this simple rule. A person may speak only after the ideas and feelings of the previous speaker are repeated accurately to the speaker's satisfaction. So, a person may speak only after. So, the receiver of the message may speak only after the sender is done talking or na pahayag na niya ang nais niyang ipahayag. So, this rule sounds simple but is difficult to practice. So, it certainly requires listening and understanding and empathy. So, another 5 techniques for effective communication by Paul Hibbs and Joseph A. Warner. So, listen with interest. So, we need to listen with full interest. Use tact. So, we need to use tactics. Find a common ground. So, kung asa mo hiyang duha, dito mo to inyong istoryahan. So, sunod, give and take. As you give information, you should take information too. Kung unsa yung istorya, imuha pong dawaton. So, avoid arguments. So, in order for your communication to work, avoid arguments. So tips for improving oral communication. So, state the mission in a way that it is congruent with positive values and beliefs. Incorporate organizational and societal values in the statement of enterprise goals. Show the importance of the mission, the reason for establishing it, and the underlying assumptions as to why the company will be successful in achieving it. Deliver the message in an easy-to-understand language using metaphors, analogies, and stories. So, you need to, Imuha pong lingawon, you need to entertain your receiver or the person you are talking to. So, practice oral communication and elicit feedback in your speech. So, show your enthusiasm and emotions in articulating your vision and mission for the company. So, as an employee, you need to show your enthusiasm. So, dili ka magluya-luya when you present your mission and vision for the company. Okay, next, tips for improving written communication. Kung ganiya sa oral communication to, karon written na pud ta communication. So, first, in writing, you should use simple words and phrases. Use short and familiar words. Dili kay saka imuhang kaorti daga na kay kag mga flowering words inya. What if ang imuhang kaistorya ato, imuhang co-employee or imuhang kuan kay dili kasabot ato nga words. So, useless ra gihapon imuhang paggamit ato kay nara gihapon mo'y miscommunication because of the choice of words nga imuhang gigamit. So next, use personal pronouns like I, you, she, whenever appropriate. So, use. Give illustrations and examples. Use charts. So, use short sentences and paragraphs. So, di na po ka magpalabi pataas kayo sa imong sentence kay basig masumhan niya imong kaistorya. So, use active verbs as in the president plans. So, active verbs, dili na mga past. Inactive or passive. So, avoid confusing and unnecessary words. Again and again, ayaw gin mo paggamit og flowering words nga kanang dili kasabot ang inyong receiver. Or kanang makakuha na, makalibog lang. O nang makakos og miscommunication. So, John S. Fielder recommends the following. So, the writing should fit the situation and the effect the writers wants to achieve. So, kung unsay gusto iparating sa ng sender, so muna dapat yang isulat direct to the point. A forceful style, when the writer has power, the tone must be polite but firm. In writing, you need to be firm. You need to be polite. Bisan pag sa sulat ra na, dapat nagyapon, sure gyapon ta og courtesy. Sunod, the passive style is appropriate when the writer is in a position lower than that of the recipient of the message. So, passive style. Kung imong sulatan ato nga letter is superior nimo, so you need to respect lang gihapon. Respect superiorities. Sunod, the personal style is recommended for communicating good news and making persuasive request for action. So, the impersonal style is generally good for conveying negative information. Impersonal man siya, so pwede na po siya gamiton nimo sa mag-convey ka og negative information. So, the lively and colorful style is suitable for good news items, advertisements, and sales letters. So, lively and colorful style. So, mo dyan na imong gamiton sa advertisements ninyo, sa inyong sales letters, and good news items. So, a less colorful style, combining the impersonal with the passive, may be appropriate for common letters. So, next, last topic is electronic media in communication. So, maabot na ta diri sa telecommunication. So, telecommunication, with the emerge of telecommunication devices, a number of companies have already effectively utilized the new technology in various ways. Telecommunication. First, mao na niyang giingon diri nga ang mga company is naka-effectively utilize na sila sa new technology. So first, a large bank supplies hardware and software to its customers so that they can easily transfer fund to their suppliers. So, nanay mga large bank account, nanay mga bank account ang ato ang mga suppliers. Next, several banks make bank by supplier services available even to individuals. So, through banking na lang ang ato ang pagbayad, like that. That is because of the telecommunication. So next, fax service transmits information within minutes to countries on the opposite side of the world. So imbes sa una, through letters pa, dugay pa kayo maabot, pila pa kaadlaw, karon isa na lang nimo ka-click, charang. Nakuha na dayon nimo, na-receive na dayon sa imong gusto padalan bisan pag overseas na siya. Susunod, Car companies stay in close contact with their suppliers, informing them about their needs and thus reducing inventory costs. So, tungod po sa telecommunication, dali na kayo makakommunicate ang car companies with their suppliers. So, sunod. Telecommunication provides an important link for just-in-time inventory system. The computerized airline reservation system making travel arrangements. So, sunod. Many organizations now makes it possible to handle big amount of data and to make information to a larger group of people. So, to end this, the electronic data processing now makes it possible to handle big amounts of data and make information available to a larger number of people. So, communicating effectively in the information age of computers is not an easy job. In an organization, lack of employee motivation, lower than desired productivity, and disharmony among superiors and subordinates are frequently the results of poor communication. So, pag naaga ni dili magkasinabtanay sa usa ka organization, that is poor communication. That is because of poor communication. So, although most of us may be doing the best we can, our opportunities for learning how to be more effective are quite limited. So, management is communication. Effective managers are effective communicators. So, one of the important premises of management is that no skill is more important to the manager than effective communication. Again, management is communication. Effective managers are effective communicators. One of the important premises of management is that no skill is more important to the manager than effective communication. Okay? So, thank you, and that's Organization and Management, Chapter 8, Communication, Reporter. Thank you.